What do you think? AI is going to be a problem for tech writers? I just want to know your insights in it. What do you think about it?
I think it's overall will be a positive thing for tech writers in general, but it will depend a lot on where you're sitting. I think for junior writers who are coming in with, fewer skills, maybe fewer areas of specialization, I think it'll be hard to break into the field or harder to break in the field as a generalist, someone who just comes in with some basic writing skills and is eager to learn. Because with any automation, usually it's the lowest complexity tasks that get automated away first.
Right.
But I think in many ways, generative AI will end up being more of a tool for use by those who seek out and understand how to use it. So it's been a very interesting experience, right? I'm sure you've seen the same thing.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there are companies that are eager to cut costs, maybe replacing some of their writers with AI. And then they quickly realize that in order to have AI that's useful, it needs to have context that is well written, up to date, clear, well organized.
Right.
So we've seen weird things happen, like the reemergence of the formal manual as a useful genre of tech writing because of these models really need kind of resources to work. So it's there's a push and pull for sure. Overall, though, I think it will be positive. It'll just become another tool we use. I've certainly benefited from it, although it's not everything people make it out to be. I think the hype has started to die down just a little bit, maybe.
Right.
In my experience, it's been very helpful as a kind of revision partner. I think is really cool, or when I'm researching something at a high level. For example, a while back, I remember I was starting to work on some SCIM documentation, some authentication stuff, and we were learning about a technology that was new to me. So I just hopped over to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, can you give me, a quick explanation of this?" And of course, immediately it spits out something pretty useful. And I was able to keep asking it questions. Well, what does that term mean? Can you explain a bit about how this works in relation to that? And
Right.
it just, with eternal patience, it's there and answers all your questions. It's really helpful for that. And you don't have to really Google around in the same way you once did. But yeah, it's very good at summarizing things, large bodies of text in particular.
Correct.
I also lead our proposal writing effort at my org, and it's really useful for checking against a set of requirements. Here's a completed questionnaire that we wrote, and can you please review this along with the requirements document? Do
Right.
these questions and these answers fill the requirements in a meaningful way? Are there any suggestions that you would have for how we can improve responses here or there? And it's really helpful for that, for sure. It saves a
Right.
lot of time.
Right. I think one issue that I recently faced about the AI is that there's confidentiality issues that, we can't really share most of the information, which is very confidential and has security issues. So do you think we can get rid of this thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be the problem with some of these old school enterprises or where you're dealing with orgs that have really sensitive information, healthcare
Right.
data, financial information, things like that. And there are some solutions to it. I think you see companies using like a RAG architecture, right? Retrieval augmented
Right.
generation
Right. Right.
to really clearly circumscribe the outer limits of what the AI can do. You're still sending information to the OpenAI API, of course, or Google's API or whatever. So you have to be okay.
Right.
Their security practices, and for the most part, they're good. No one's perfect, but that's kind of a risk you take. Alternatively, you can start to host some things locally, and we have like
Yeah.
weird on-prem solutions for models.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
can be pretty costly, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's some solutions to the challenge for sure. I think companies will, if the value is there, and I think it is, will start to find reasonable solutions to that.
True. Even I also started with one of my friends to develop our own kind of an application using open APIs. I'm still worried about the security as we are using the API. So how much exposed we are, we don't know about it. That will, I think,
Yeah.
always be there.
Yeah, for sure. There's
Yeah.
a certain calculated risk I think you have to take if you want to use some of these tools for sure. And you can try and create some kind of walled garden experience for yourself and really manage your data, but then you're limiting the capability of some of those tools. So yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. Even more interesting now is the other side of it is not just data privacy and security, but also accuracy and reliability and
Right.
predictability. So we've
Right.
all seen a lot of funny stories about GPT returning really imprecise things, something like adding some glue to your spaghetti to make it chewier and more delicious, like some really absurd things. And now we have agentic AI, right? So we're giving AI more autonomy and giving it skills and saying proactively go out and do these things. And I think
Right.
it's really powerful, but on the flip side, it needs to stay within some kind of predictable boundary.
Right.
And that's where I think we'll see tools like process or system orchestration tools with agentic AI built into it. It's one thing our company, Tonkean, is working on. That's kind of that
Okay.
sweet
Right.
spot.
Okay. In case of skill sets, if a person who really jump into the tech writing field as a career, so what kind of skills are mostly required?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, skills in tech writing. I think detail orientedness is probably one of the big ones. You have to be able to see small differences and understand how to tell the difference between things. And maybe precision is related to that for sure, right? Not only
Right.
understanding, seeing small differences. If you're looking at an API, document or something, and
Mhm.
knowing that that colon there makes a difference, and it's a
Yeah.
different thing.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
mean, like that's obviously
Yeah.
as having a developer background, it's basically the number of former writers and people who've become either technical writers or developers that I know is really interesting. But I think being resourceful and knowing how to find information is really an important skill too. I've had some writers I've worked with who are very skilled writers, but they seem to have some difficulty in finding what they need, like they're very quick to go ask someone when
Okay.
they could have just as easily done some research, dug through their, internal wiki or whatever it may be.
Right. Right.
And I think knowing how to be scrappy and how to find stuff like that is really helpful. It depends a lot on how good your internal resources are, how organized all that stuff is. We don't always have the privilege of having really well organized internal documentation and specs and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a really interesting thing that you just mentioned. Like writers instantly going to developers, but they are not sure about what questions to be asked. Like it becomes confusing for the developers as well. So thanks for mentioning that.
They may not interpret your question, and
Yeah,
especially if
true.
you're working asynchronously, right? And you're sending a
Right,
message
right,
on Slack or sending an email or whatever it is,
right.
it could take a very long time for you to actually get to the bottom of whatever it is you're trying to learn.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. In case of growth, what tech writers should focus on? Like, should they focus on being in a lead role in future? What do you think about this career prospect?
Yeah, it's going to depend a lot on the person, right? If
Yeah.
you really have a passion for leadership and enjoy that part of the job, it's totally a natural career path for a tech writer to become a lead writer and then maybe a team manager or something like that
Okay.
and scale up to managing whole departments or something. I've
Yeah.
seen that path be very successful for some people
Yeah.
for sure. So that's an option. If writers are not as interested in leadership or maybe don't want to move past the lead role, like the team lead. Like for example, I don't think I would be happy in a role where all I did was management and I didn't really get a chance to do at least some individual
Right.
contributor work.
Right.
And that just be a good rounding, a good foundation. I just enjoy it.
Right.
So I think trying to figure out exactly both what you want to do and what you're skilled at. So if you want to be in a leadership role and you have that skill set or can get that skill set, then yeah, that's great. I think it's a totally great way to go. But when you maybe don't want to move into a managerial position, I think it
Yeah.
becomes a much more interesting question because then
Yeah.
what do you do?
I think I always wanted to be an individual contributor rather than in a managerial position. So that's why I asked this question, like, what do you guys actually think? Or am I missing something?
Yeah, it is. It's a tough
Yeah.
question. And I think minus the technical writing manager path, there isn't a whole lot of really clear established ways forward,
True.
right?
True.
I think a lot of it will just matter on your org and your industry, whether you're working in, I imagine a lot of your audience is software kind of tech writers, right? I
Right.
think probably most tech writers are in tech in one way or the other. There's a lot of
Right.
hardware and stuff as well. I think it's more a matter of finding an org and an org structure that works well for you and allows you to
Mhm.
do what you're interested in, more so than clear-cut lines in the career. Because the career is just so broad. The tech writing field is just so huge and varied that it's it doesn't make sense. It's not an apples to apples comparison. I think for me, it's been more about growing personally and learning skills that I'm interested in learning. So I think a lot of tech writers, if they don't have developer or programming knowledge, that's a really important and can be a helpful skill set to pick up. Even if it's just being good enough to write some basic scripts and more importantly, read code and know what things are going on. How many times have we seen a code sample that we don't understand or is not commented? Like none of them are commented, you know? So you have to know what it's like, and that's part of that resourcefulness too.
Right.
So yeah, all kinds of options out there. I think it's a matter of finding what you personally are interested in and just figuring out the best way to spend your time to get there.
Right. Makes sense.